where the golden antlers bleed, a romantasy of ruin and reverie. Listen, lean closer, there is something moving in the interval between the waking and sleep. Something warm, something luminous, something alive. And if you're very still, you will hear its hooves upon the meadow of your mind. So let's begin. Seraphel Morvaine did not believe in anything she could not measure. She lived alone with 12 telescopes and a reliable sadness, mapping stars that did not require her love in return. She was, in her precise and solitary way, entirely content until the night she fell asleep at a desk and woke somewhere else entirely. A meadow that breathed, silver grasses rising and falling like the ribs of a sleeping world. 3 moons above, one white, one amber, one the deep red of an old wound. And at the meadow's far edge, a creature of impossible beauty awaits. A stag, white as winter rivers, wearing a crown of antlers sheathed in living gold. It did not move. It only looked at her, and its looking, something inside Seraphel, something she had filed under unnecessary long ago, quietly, irreversibly opened. She woke with a word written in her own handwriting on the star chart beneath her cheek, a word in a language she did not recognize and could not have written. She stared at it for a long time. Then the dream returned the following night, and the night after, and every night thereafter, patient as rain. And each time the stag came closer. Imolan Rue, archivist, devoted friend, keeper of inconvenient truths, had known about the Veleth Valley for years. He had found the maps in a forgotten wing of the archive, a valley with no roads in, a castle with no name, and no record of anyone who entered ever choosing to leave. He had rolled them in silk and hidden them behind shelf 12, and told himself this was protection. When Seraphel arrived with her dream writings translated by herself, simply sitting still in the dreaming and asking the meadow to teach her, Imolan unrolled the maps and pressed his face into his hands. Some truths wait to be told, others arrive on their own. The script was Velethi, the tongue of a royal line. The histories insisted that ended 3 centuries ago in fire and silence. The castle at the valley's heart pulsed on the map like a bruise, and its center a single symbol, the image of the stag with golden antlers. Across the city, a healer named Miravel Ashhorn was mixing a sleeping draught for the patient she had not yet received, whispering to herself, "She is beginning to remember, and the demon inside the castle is beginning to feel it." She had known this day was coming. She had been dreading it. She had also, with the quiet resolution of someone who has run out of reason to delay, already packed her satchel. They gathered with the brisk inevitability of her people, whom fate has decided to inconvenience all at once. Thessaly Rain, a once noble thief who now stole only secrets, arrived uninvited, announced that cursed castles were her professional specialty, and helped herself to the travel provisions. Miravel came last, with a healer's satchel and the sorrowful eyes of someone who has already read the ending. The valley road opened for them at dusk, a silver path between alder trees, hung like luminous moss, their branches braided overhead into a cathedral of living dark. The air smelled of rain and old roses and something that was almost music, and chose at the last moment to remain only almost. An hour in, Thessaly stopped walking. Someone is following us. They turned. In the space between two trees, a figure robed in extinguished things, face unseen, utterly still. Then gone, like mist, and where it had stood, a single white flower had grown from nothing, fully bloomed, entirely impossible. The Scion Oracle, breathed Miravel. It knows we are coming, which means the castle does too. Above, where the autumn sky should have been grey, a single amber moon burnt low and watchful, and every ribbon of its light pointed forward. The Veleth castle rose from the valley floor the way a wound rises, slowly, inevitable, with the dark magnificence that made the lungs forget their purpose. Obsidian towers pointing at the sky like accusations, windows glowing amber from within, not warmly, but with the amber of embers burning far too long without anyone to attend them. The gates were open, not in invitation, in the way of a mouth mid-scream. "It's morning," said Seraphel softly, and no one asked how she knew. A small spirit child appeared at the gate, Sorviel, ancient as the stones, amber-eyed, wearing a dress of white moss. Her voice was bells rung in an empty hall. You came. He said you would. She looked at Seraphel with her terrible amber eyes. But there is not much time. The demon is learning to wear the prince's brother's face. When there is nothing left of Cassivile, instead his own bones, it will have a body that can leave its valley. And then she smiled, the saddest smile any of them had ever seen. Then it will no longer need any one of us. They entered through the open gate. The obsidian walls rose around them like the closing of enormous hands. The obsidian walls are still there. The Sand Oracle found them in the third corridor, or rather, the corridor rearranged itself around the oracle with a sound like a long sigh. Its volume and its voice came from everywhere and far, from very, very far away. The dreamer was not chosen at random. She was found. She was returned. Seraphel went still. You were here before, 3 centuries ago. You were the astronomer of the valley, the one Aurelian loved. You named a star for him above the east tower, and you are the reason Cassivile's longing curdled into ruin. He did not only want power, he wanted what his brother had. The silence followed, held up the ceiling. Mirabelle very quietly sat against the wall and covered her face. This was what she had known, and this was the stone she had been carrying. The dreams, Seraphel said softly. They were never dreams. No, the oracle said. They were his memories, sent across 300 years, following the thread of your soul from one life to the next, until it found you again. He has been looking for me, Sorville from the shadows, every night, running the dream meadow, hoping. Seraphel made the sound like something enormous and long held finally releasing. Then she said, "Where is he?" The throne room was a cathedral of ruined splendor, obsidian arches, a mirror black floor that doubled every shadow, and on the throned one, a figure wearing Cassivile Veleth's face, like an ill-fitted garment. Beside it smiled Lord Veremore, the demon's favorite mouth with tremendous warmth and nothing behind it at all. The demon looked at Seraphel with Cassivile's eyes and said in Cassivile's voice, threaded with 3 centuries of unwitnessed grief, "She always comes back for him, never for me." And Seraphel heard in those words, in the wound they were made from, not the demon, Cassivile himself, still there, still raw, still, after all this time, longing to be seen. The demon surged, a column of darkness, total and immediate. Thessaly's knife dissolved in shadow, but Seraphel walked forward. "Cassivile," she said, "into the heart of the dark, not in fear, not in accusation, but in address, in gentleness," and the darkness faltered. "I see you, not the demon. You, the boy who loved his brother too much and himself too little. You have been punishing yourself for 300 years. That is enough. That is enough." And from within the darkness, in a voice entirely human and fractured and old with grief, "I made everything wrong. I let it in. I deserve this." And then Lesinara of the Veil stepped from the shadows she had inhabited since the valley road, silver-thorned and ancient, and said, "Now, while he's listening, now is when we weave." Lesinara told them plainly. She had placed the curse herself 3 centuries ago to seal the demon inside these walls. The seal required a sacrifice of love. Aurelian had offered himself without hesitation, asked only one thing, that Seraphel's soul be brought back, that he be allowed to wait in whatever form was given until love found its way home again. The demon, hearing this, did the only thing left to it. It turned inward, burrowing into Cassivile's last remnant of self-loathing, whispering, "You are too far gone. Forgiveness is not for you." But Cassivile, for the first time in 300 years, chose. He stepped forward out of the darkness, gaunt, raw, weeping in the quiet way of someone finally allowed to. And the demon, severed from his host, rose formlessly in the vaulted dark. Lesinara opened her silver thorn arms. Thessaly threw a blade made of something the color of starlight. Imolan raised his lantern high. Miravel sang in the old tongue of sleep and memory. And the demon dissolved, not violently, but slowly, into old grief, at last allowed to disperse. The castle exhaled, and Seraphel felt a pull, intimate and precise, the way a specific star feels when fog finally lifts. She followed it through a new doorway, down a corridor of white stone, into a courtyard open to the amber moon. The stag was there, white as winter rivers, golden antlered, river-eyed, looking at her with expression. She had memorized across 300 nights of dreaming. Relief so vast, it had followed him. She walked to him. She placed both hands against the warmth of his great face and said, "I remember you. I have always remembered you. I am sorry it took me so many lives to find the way home." The golden antlers blazed with white gold, total joyous, and the light washed through her into every cold and unnamed place. And when it faded, a man stood before her, tall, autumn-haired, and river-colored eyes, and a smile that was, she found, even more extraordinary in person. He was looking at her as though she were her every star that she had named. "Seraphel," said Aurelian Veleth, in a voice 3 centuries unused and entirely steady, "I named a star for you above the east tower. It has been waiting rather patiently to be introduced." She laughed, surprised out of tears, and took his hand, and it was warm and solid and real. They walked through the east tower together. It did not happen all at once. It never does. But the first night was extraordinary. The boneweed dissolved into a bloom no one had names for, silver white with gold-tipped petals, exhaling the fragrance of old libraries and arriving rain. The obsidian walls warmed from within through burgundy and rose gold until the whole castle glowed like a hearth fire in a room you love. The valley's elder trees leaned inward, curious, and then bloomed out of season, filling the air with slow, amber-lit drifts of white petals. In the corridor of white stone, where they had chased each other as children, Cassivile sat beside his brother and said nothing for a very long time. And then, "I'm sorry." And Aurelian, who had 3 centuries to consider his answer, said, "I know. I have known for a very long time, and I'm still here." Sorviel sat on the courtyard wall, with her amber eyes very wide and very small hands pressed together, watching the valley bloom. And when Imolan sat beside her and asked if this was what she had hoped for, she said, "I did not dare hope, but yes, yes, this is exactly this." And the amber moon rose warm above the valley that had learned at last to breathe without sorrow. And a woman who had once mapped stars alone reached for the hand of the man who had sent his love across the 300 years of faithful, luminous waiting. And he was there. He was finally and entirely there. The demon was ash. The curse was memory. The castle was full of firelight and impossible flowers. And somewhere in the east tower, a woman laughed. And a man who had waited 3 centuries to hear it closed his eyes and thought, "There it is. There is the thing I was waiting for." The end.